Biden and Kamala Harris have vowed to take away your Second Amendment rights through gun bans, gun confiscation, and government regulations. Now, Joe Biden is no longer hiding his real intentions, and we need you to take action now.
Whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things. But
the Biden administration is coming after your right to own any gun, and we need you to text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221. Joe Biden has already issued executive orders. He is now demanding Congress push through radical gun legislation. You can fight back to stop Joe Biden's gun grab, but you must text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221. Take action to protect your right to keep and bear arms. We urgently need millions of Americans to text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221. Text PROTECT2A to 888-762-0221.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Daily Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. And this guy over here, that's Rob Morse. He's the guy behind Self-Defense Gun Stories and the Slow Facts blog, and you can find his stuff on about 35 different websites. He writes all over the place, and one of my longest term people that has worked with me. I consider him a brilliant mind in the Second Amendment media. Rob, thanks for coming on board today again, man.
Oh, my pleasure, Paul.
So lots and lots and lots of stuff to get to today. Before we get into what's going on, I want to remind everybody, if you have an opinion, a comment, a humorous quip you want to throw out, comment on either the YouTube or the Facebook video, and we will get your comment up and we'll talk about it or laugh with you or at you on the air. But at any rate, let's go ahead and get started. The one story I wanted to get to the most, Cam Edwards put up over at Bearing Arms. The ATF now has nearly 1 billion records of gun sales, and their stated case is they're going to keep them forever. They want gun retailers now to keep their Form 4473s forever, and when the gun store closes down, even if that's 75 years from now, they're going to take all those records, they're going to combine those records in with their own records. Basically, they're going to create a de facto gun registry quasi-legally. And that is very shakily on the quasi-legally side. What do you think about that, Rob, man?
Here's the tension. That's against the law. Federal law says you can't keep a register of gun owners. And they go, oh no, we'd never do that. We're just recording every sale. Every sale. Okay, there are person-to-person transfers that are legal in some states, particularly in some states if you have a concealed carry permit. You've already passed the background check. What would a background check possibly do? What could a Form 4473 required by the ATF possibly do except record who has what gun?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what that tells me is more of us need to press for state laws that will allow person-to-person transfers, and as individuals we have to make the choice to sell to individuals who have carry permits. We know they're a bunch of Boy Scouts. They have a clean record, or that silly piece of paper would have been grabbed. Paul, what do you think?
I think how do I put this?
Don't get us thrown off the air.
According to my good friend Rob Morse, he quite often says elections matter.
Thank you. What's fascinating is that there's not a state attorney general who's objecting that this is against the law. There's not a senator that's objecting that this is against the law. It sure looks like it to me. When you have 1 billion firearms, by the way, there are only, what was it? 80 million firearms owners in the United States?
And 1 billion firearms records. Sales of records.
Right. So you've got us going back a number of years.
Yes. Absolutely. And a good number of these are paper records. meaning they go back to the
They go back decades.
yes, and so honestly, I think the best cure for this is the Indiana Jones cure. They're allowed to keep paper records in a physical warehouse.
An interesting question for you, Paul. In theory, we know where the criminal got his gun. Tell me why we care.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I know where you're going with that. It really doesn't matter. It's not going to. It's not going to undo his actions.
Thank you. And we haven't seen the ATF turn around and vigorously prosecute people who give guns to criminals. If we look, almost all criminal firearms are stolen for straw purchases. Hey, Uncle Ed, yeah, I know your check's been a little late. You're an addict. Here's a way to earn another $200. Go get me the gun.
You know, straw purchases, the vast majority of straw purchases, what happens there is boyfriend goes to baby mama and says, "You love me,
Yep.
right?" And that's how the straw purchase happens.
Well, and what we've seen time and again, both particularly in our failing blue cities, we see prosecutors go, if I prosecute her, all her kids become wards of the state. They're a bunch of walking nightmares because they're barely parented at all. I don't have that much foster care space. Okay, we give mom probation. And then the boyfriend does it again because what isn't punished is repeated.
And not only that, they don't give mom a felony record.
There you go. Well, right. Part of that is, we can't give a bunch of minorities records. I go, well, which do you want? You want to keep guns away from criminals, or do you want to keep everybody's record pristine? And evidently, politics is more important than lives. So when the gun control advocates say, it might save one life, then you go, okay, how about prosecuting people who perform straw purchases? What should happen to them? Well, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Let me get a couple comments in here because we're getting some really smart comments coming in. Larry says, here's our old buddy reframing.
Exactly. Thank you, Larry.
And Michael says, this amounts to 120.5 firearms for every 100 residents. The U.S. has approximately 5% of the world's population and 42% of civilian gun ownership. If legal gun ownership was a problem, you would know it. Those are rookie numbers, though, Michael. We got to pump those numbers up.
Thank you. Well, now, on the other hand, Michael, that's virtually a tautology. All the civilian guns are owned by Americans. You go, right, because the rest of you guys are subjects. We're citizens. Sorry.
There you go. The next story, both you and I chuckled at this earlier. New Mexico has a proposed new law that is running through their legislature. You want to let them know about it, Rob?
I do. I think this was a Republican who put it up. He wants movie actors and other, quote, film set professionals to undergo state-sponsored gun safety training. Yeah, but that's because Alec Baldwin was using his cinematographer for target practice. The interested bill that will require all acting and film production personnel, wherever firearms are present on the set, to complete a safety course offered by the New Mexico Fish and Game Department. Okay, it's basically a modified version of hunter safety. Production companies that don't comply means what's the hammer? You don't get your state film tax rebate. They offer a rebate of between 25 and 35% of in-state spending. It's really unclear whether the Democrat-led legislature in New Mexico would bring this bill up for debate or even for a vote, they only have a 30-day legislative session. It ends 16 days from now.
Yeah.
And then the other question is, would the Democrat governor sign it? Probably not.
No. Although it is, I mean, it is pure gun control. I mean, it is absolute gun control. So it should be right up their alley.
They should. We just want mandatory training.
Yeah.
What's the matter? I like. Oh, you're a devious fellow.
Yeah,
a wonderful friendship.
Yeah, and this kind of dovetails back. Of course, this all happened because of Alec Baldwin and what happened on the Rust movie set. This got brought up on the Polite Society podcast last night when we were talking about New York City. I have to wonder, in New York City, you can get a concealed carry permit good in New York City if you're a celebrity. You have to wonder if Alec Baldwin doesn't have a New York City concealed carry permit.
Where does he live?
He has an apartment in New York. I'm fairly certain of it.
No, he's also got outstanding domestic violence issues. If I'm thinking of the right Baldwin,
among other issues,
at least. So the answer is probably not. Because you can skate a lot, but whoever let that pass, no, that's too political for even corrupt politicians to touch. Should he?
Yeah, but you're talking New York City,
right?
If we had, I don't have my wallet on me right here in the studio, but if I had a $10 bill, I would put it down that he may have one. And there's no way to prove, because these are private records, and I don't think just as I wouldn't want whether or not I have a South Dakota concealed carry permit to be publicly available knowledge. I don't want New York City's concealed carry permits to be publicly available knowledge. But if there were a way to find out, I would put a $10 bet down that he has one.
Do you want to go to? And I want to turn off. For whatever reason, Schumer keeps talking in my ear. Be quiet. Be quiet, Chuck. Do we want to talk about this Firearms Policy Coalition suit?
Yes, but I want to get a comment in real fast first.
Good.
Larry says, with all the celebrity noise, I'm surprised and disappointed we do not hear from shooting celebs, especially those who compete in shooting and celebrity shooting events. Retraining for actors. We not directly about this bill. Of course, this is fairly new. The bill only came to my attention yesterday, and last evening at that. So it may not have made the rounds in Hollywood that this is out there. But I have, since Alec Baldwin unintentionally killed his cinematographer, we have heard from several actors saying, look, this is irresponsibility. We have heard from actors saying, yeah, that what happened is not cool. So
now we're going to go to Yosemite?
Yes, let's go to Yosemite.
Okay. So an individual named Ralph Norton. Oh, it's Ralph Crandon. Sorry, different Ralph. Back in 1981, he got into a fight in a bar. It was in Yosemite Valley. Therefore, Park Service gets involved. Therefore, it's a federal issue. He pays a $50 fine. Spent 6 days in jail. And we don't know, he was sentenced to 6. We don't know how much he actually had to spend. And he had 1 year of probation. Okay. We're way past 2020 now. So 4 decades later, he goes to get a firearm and they say, those records back then were destroyed. We see that there was some sort of conviction. It could have been for domestic violence. We can't prove that it wasn't. And therefore, we're denying you your right to be able to purchase a firearm. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. The law says you have to show that I was a prohibited person. not that court records are ambiguous and possibly I couldn't. No, the burden doesn't mean that we have to show the federal government that we've never had a not disqualifying conviction. You guys go find it. If you can't find it, I get the piece of paper. By the way, that common sense has been issued by at least 2 circuit courts. Now we have to get the federal circuit, because it's up now. We're up at the federal level, because this was on park property, to agree to do the right thing. And if not, it will be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, because we didn't have a circuit split.
Right.
One circuit says yes, the other says no. Okay. And by the way, the issue typically occurs when the records are out of state. Hi, my wife died. I was treated for depression. I checked myself in. Oh, how can we tell that wasn't a mandatory 72-hour hold because you're a crazy person? Well, I just told you, and you see the records. They go, no, you still might be crazy. We're going to deny you the permit. They go, no, I told you what it was. You didn't believe me because I don't have effectively, you can't prove that the documents I showed you are genuine. No one can prove that. You have to then go through the chain of evidence. They're treating like it's evidence at a trial. And unless you can prove you're qualified, they're saying no guns. Well, that's been turned down by 2 courts. You're about to be a 3rd.
One would certainly hope so. And
well, now, okay, here's the fascinating part. If it's not, and we appeal it, can we then get an injunction to say, hey, until this is decided, please force the federal government to issue these permits, because you're denying people's rights. How are they going to wait? This could drag on for decades.
Yeah, the especially the federal court system is not known for speediness.
Unless you're Joe Biden's sons. Yeah.
Yeah, you are correct there. Let's talk about that guy who was just in your ear there a few seconds ago.
Oh, do we have to? Okay. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is pushing for a $1.5 billion slush fund. He's going to call it criminal violence. It's a slush fund to pay the ATF to look at illegal firearms only in New York. Now, I wonder why. Why is that?
Illegal firearms. Wait a minute. What are illegal firearms?
Thank you. Exactly. This is the support. This is kick money back to Bloomberg's gun control groups in New York. This is pay to play by any other name. It's also that just to study firearms in New York is more than the ATF budget for the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the number of homicides, not all of which are committed with illegal, a lot of which we know, yeah, you got that from Vinny down the corner. That's the under the stairs gun that all the thugs use in this neighborhood. Oh no, we have to, getting the ATF involved is ridiculous, but it comes to about $1 million a murder. So this is pay off the ATF and make Bloomberg happy with me so I get more money in campaign contributions. It's not really. You can make noise about the iron pipeline, and Bloomberg's been embarrassed when a bunch of his investigators basically did illegal things and should have been charged. Mm-hmm. Now we can get the ATF to play the same game. Can you say entrapment?
That is exactly what it is. Diane over on the Facebook side says they cannot make their own laws up. Diane, they're certainly going to try. They're going to do their darndest.
Diane, thanks for commenting again.
They're going to. Yeah, they are going to absolutely try to make their own laws up.
Right.
I don't know that they're going to get that through the budgeting process right now. I don't know if they could get $1.2 million for a new bathroom in Schumer's office put through. let alone 1.2 billion for an ATF to look at New York.
And this is where the real art of politics is played, where you go, sure, I'll give you 1.5 billion. Here's what it's gonna cost you.
You know, let me.
So that's how the game's played. Yeah, national reciprocity, no problem. Oh, and by the way, that Supreme Court pick, yeah, now I get some input. Otherwise, it's not working out.
Let me put this one up. Charlie Chambers, our good friend, says Wall Street rumors are that Bloomberg has 25 billion in cash of his 65 billion. The firearms industry total is about 15 to 20 billion a year. He urges everybody donate to saf.org. And one Michael and 200 million of us. You know, I'm going to take this opportunity. We've got a little bit of time here at the bottom of the show. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you, Charlie, and to make a little bit of a pitch in that the SAF is the one organization that has done more than any other organization. I've been saying this since long before I was an employee, to get our gun rights restored. A good friend of mine, Rob Morse, when I very first met him, impressed me when he told me, the SAF, when you absolutely positively have to sue everybody in the room overnight, playing off the old FedEx commercial. And that's what the SAF is known for. If something's wrong, they will sue your pants off and make you give them money for doing it, because they will sue a state, and because it's a civil rights case, they have the ability to go after attorney's fees when they win, and they win a lot. But they don't get all the costs, just some of the attorney's fees back, and these lawsuits are not free. So please do join the SAF at saf.org. Besides, you get, as the side benefit, you get things like the daily bullet coming at you every Monday through Friday, and the weekly bullet coming at you on the weekends. So again, saf.org. We would love to have you be members, and a lifetime membership is only $150. So you can't say that, NRA.
Shall we go to Washington State before we close?
Yes. What do we got from Washington State?
Well, who wrote this, by the way? I should. Oh, John Petrolino. I knew that. Every gun control law is sold as a promise. If you only do this, then people will never die. Well, there was an initiative in Washington State, and it said mandatory background checks, blah, blah, blah. And then criminals, of course, won't be able to get guns, except now we see crime has spiked. Huge criminal violence. Turns out when you defund the police, you get more crime. Who would have thought? Therefore, their gun control promise was an immense failure. I think there's another side to this, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Honest gun owners do such a good job at defending themselves, meaning it's so frequent, it's so clean, meaning very few people who didn't need to get shot actually get shot. That part of that has actually led to the increase. Not just the fact that, crime rose. No, it's because of this gun control measure. It contributed to the rise in crime.
Absolutely. And Tom Knighton and I touched on this a little bit yesterday, in that we suggested yesterday that when in the future, and we read a press release from Alan Gottlieb and the good folks over the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, put out a press release yesterday. We read that press release, and in the future, if gun control is put forward, we wanted to couch it as, how many more people do you want to kill through gun control? Because we can point out case after case after case when gun control is put through, more people die. It happens time and time and time again. Okay, Chuck Schumer, how many people do you want to kill this time? Because you're going to.
Paul, and the strength and weakness of that is you and I can both point to individuals who were hung up in the system when they were murdered. Mm-hmm. We can put a particular face to it. The plural of anecdote isn't data. It's anecdotes. So what we can also do is say, here are the millions of individuals who used a firearm for self-defense, and these are the guys you are disarming. Which one of those would you like to face the thug empty-handed?
Absolutely.
So the data's there. It's up to guys like you and I to get it in front of the public.
Well, speaking of getting it in front of the public, one more little self-aggrandizing plug I want to do is I want to encourage everybody, if you happen to catch us on podcast, share it with a friend. If you happen to catch it, if you're catching it on video, either live or replay or however you're catching, share the show with a friend. We would love to expand our reach. And the way we're not going to pay anybody for advertising, the way we're going to do that is by you sharing the show with a friend. Speaking of sharing shows, Rob, talk about self-defense gun stories and what it is and where people can find it.
Oh, fine. It's a snack food of a podcast. I try and keep it under 20 minutes, okay, on your way to and from lunch. It's what our fellow citizens did right. They defend themselves thousands of times a day. I talk about 4 of them every week. Not only what they did right that was covered in the news, but what best practice would be. What should we do if we're in a similar situation? How should we plan ahead? And then, of course, I get to co-host the Polite Society podcast with you. Can I mention Slow Facts?
Please do.
My blog's at slowfacts.wordpress.com. I've been doing that for nearly a decade. 1,900 articles. I'm an overnight sensation. From there, the writing's often picked up at AmmoLand, where I write the weekly Armed Citizens column.
You know what? Just occurred to me, tomorrow, as we record this, tomorrow is the 10-year anniversary of the Polite Society podcast. 10 years ago tomorrow evening at about 8 o'clock in the evening was when I published my very first episode. Please do not go back, search, and listen for it. That just don't. But
as a favor to Paul,
yes. I thought you were doing your thing before I was, though, Rob.
No. And okay, let me give more kudos to the Polite Society podcast. It used to be called Politics and Guns. I think you were on episode 70 or 80.
Yeah.
And for a while, we started doing not only the weekends. I would produce, record, edit a midweek show. That went on for a year.
Yeah.
So no, you got me into it, and then I went, if I can do an episode of Politics and Guns, later to become the Polite Society, I can do my own podcast. Hey, and then somebody asked me, Grandma saved herself. Was she lucky or was she good? In a way, that started Self-Defense Gun Stories. Thank you, Paul.
But we're late, but who cares? But wasn't Slow Facts? That's longer than 10 years, though.
Right. No, Slow Facts has been going before Self-Defense Gun Stories, right? Or
okay.
Before Polite Society.
Yeah. I thought you'd been going for a while because when we met up, my very first gun rights policy conference was in Orlando, and it was the October after. It was in 2012. It was the October after I started the show. I just started feeling my way around the gun rights community, and everybody said, "You got to get to this thing. Everybody that's in gun rights is at Gun Rights Policy Conference. You got to be there." And that's where I got introduced to Rob Morse. I got introduced to John Richardson there. I met all kinds of fantastic people there, and it just blew me away. And I've only missed one since that very first one, and I will never miss one again. mainly because they want me to come back every year. And now that I'm an employee, I broadcast the thing. So,
yeah, I think oh wow, I started in June of 2011.
okay. So yeah, you've been going. Yeah, you've been going longer than me.
Almost. It'll be a decade coming up.
All right,
it's been great.
Absolutely. We are going to go ahead and shut this down. I do want to thank you for watching. Thank you, everybody who contributed as far as commenting. Thank you for podcast listeners. Once again, everybody, please share it with a friend and come join us at 5 p.m. Central Time if you're catching the live show, and we'll be back every day this week. And come join us on Saturday, noon Central, for the Weekly Bullet. Thanks again, everybody.